Okay, everyone, thank you for your patience. We'll begin now. My name is Jeff DeSico. I'm the Chief Operating Officer of Golden Gate Global. We are an EB-5 regional center, helping people come to the US through investment. I've been in EB-5 for about 11 years and have helped close to 2,000 investors and investor families come to the US during that time. I think this webinar is going to be very useful for those of you beginning the process and wanting to understand how it is that you can come to the US through the EB-5 through the EB-5 visa. A little housekeeping I had mentioned before, but none of this is legal advice. This is for informational purposes only, and neither legal nor securities advice. Again, it's for information purposes only. We're very lucky to have, or I'm lucky to have two very established people in EB-5 joining us today. First of all, Christina, who's also from Golden Gate Global, who's on the ground and runs our efforts in South Africa. So Christina, if you wouldn't mind saying a few words about your past.
Thank you, Jeff. Thanks very much for everyone who's joining us today on this webinar. And thank you to Zipo, also our partner from Fragomen. My name is Christina Tobacco, and I'm the Director of International Business Development for Golden Gate Global. I'm a U.S. licensed attorney as well as a licensed finance professional. And prior to joining the EB-5 industry, I was a litigator in my native San Francisco, California. I'm presently speaking to you from the Eastern Cape. I split my time between here and our San Francisco headquarters.
And we also are delighted to have Zifo here from Fragomen, which is a law firm, the largest single practice law firm in the world. And Zifo, if you wouldn't mind saying a few words about your background.
I'm Zifo from Fragomen. As Jeff said, thanks so much for having me again. I've been with Fragomen now for the past 5 years, specializing in private clients division and business development with private clients. Even though we assist clients who are interested in EB-5 visas, we also look at other global mobility solutions across the globe. We cover immigration into about 170 jurisdictions. Before Fragomen, I was with PricewaterhouseCoopers and their finance transformation division. Forward to really sharing insights on the program, and look forward to taking your questions later. Thank you.
Thanks, Zifo. Great. At the beginning of these, because I don't know the audience, how many people have experience in EB-5, how many are just, looking at it for the first time, how many have heard of it before, but just in broad strokes, I think it's always good to get people to get an understanding. EB-5 is a program whereby you can invest $800,000 US into a private enterprise project and get a conditional green card, which eventually becomes a permanent green card and can lead to citizenship. Now, there are many citizenship by investment programs around the world, whether it's Portugal or Malta, and maybe you've seen them. The big difference with EB-5, I think, is really, the US government, of course, they're interested in your money, but our debt in the US is about $25 trillion. So your $800,000 really wouldn't move the needle in terms of bringing in money. EB-5 is a job creation program. So what the United States government wants is you to invest into a private enterprise project that creates 10 jobs for Americans. Our job as an EB-5 regional center, which is what Golden Gate is to find those projects and structure them so they qualify for EB-5. Now, with that investment, it's a passive investment on your part. You're not buying a business. You are not managing anything. You invest the $800,000 into the US with a company like mine. And then at some point, and Christina will walk you through the timelines, you get the ability to live and work in the US through that investment. So it's not going to provide you with a job. It's not going to provide you with a lot of income, but it's an investment that, as long as your investment goes well, you will get that $800,000 back. EB-5 has been around in different forms for about 35 years. Really, the last 15 or 20, it's been extremely popular. There's been tens of billions of dollars invested in the United States through the EB-5 program. So it's very tried and tested. Christine, you can go to the next slide. So the advantages of the EB-5 program, well, if you get a conditional green card, what does that mean for you? Well, it means a number of things. You can live anywhere in the United States. You can work anywhere in the United States. You don't need sponsorship. If you're a student and you reside in a state with a public university, you'd be able to get in-state student fees, tuition, which is very cheap. You can open your own business. You cannot open your own business. You can retire. Basically, you are a U.S. citizen, with the exception of being able to vote. And that's the advantage of a green card. So EB-5, if done successfully, will lead to a conditional green card and a permanent green card, which is renewable every 10 years, forever. Or if you choose, if you spend 5 years in the United States on one of these conditional green cards, you can become a citizen, and take the passport. So not only does it lead to permanent residency, but it also can lead to citizenship if you choose. Broad strokes, that's what the program is about. I'd love to have Christina now kind of walk you through what this process looks like.
Thank you, Jeff. So turning to the legal aspect of the EB-5 visa process and associated timelines. So before I flip to the next slide, I'm going to forewarn that the flow chart I'm going to show can be a little bit intimidating or daunting. But I'll try and break it down as best I can into the two major phases of the EB-5 visa process. So here we are, an applicant outside the United States. And it bears mention that foreign nationals can apply either from outside the United States or from within the United States. And the latter has a little bit of a faster timeline. I'll go into that in just a moment when I flick to the next slide. But walking through this flow chart from the very first step, I'm going to let Zipo comment and sort of explain the source of funds aspect much more thoroughly. So pardon me while I give sort of cursory service to that aspect of the project. But in essence, the US government wants to ensure that the $800,000 you're bringing into the country is from legal and legitimate sources. So working with an American immigration attorney, a firm like Fragomen, you're going to put together a source of funds narrative documenting how the money was earned and how it came to come into the US escrow account where the investment is made. So once your immigration attorney gives you the green light after you've put together your source of funds, you're going to go ahead and invest in the project of your choosing. Now, once you've invested, your immigration attorney is going to file your application for a conditional green card, also known as the Form I-526E. So this is the phase of the process where the United States Citizenship and Immigration Service, which is the oversight body responsible for overseeing the EB-5 program, is basically assessing your eligibility for the EB-5 program overall. So that's twofold. Mainly the source of funds, examining where that money came from, and second of all, that the investor has put their money into an EB-5 qualified project. So approximate timeline for the processing of that application for a conditional green card is between 1 and 2 years, though some projects are coming in a little bit faster. Once you receive the approval for your application for a conditional green card, you're going to go through something called consular processing. So if you're a South African resident, you're going to schedule an interview appointment at the Johannesburg consulate, which is the one that processes immigrant visas in South Africa. Go for a high-level interview and receive an immigrant visa stamp in your passport. Once you've received the immigrant visa stamp, you have 6 months to enter the United States and receive your physical conditional green card. So the conditional green card is, in essence, in effect, the same as an unconditional green card, the main difference being that it expires within 2 years. So as Jeff said, it allows you to live and work anywhere in the United States, free from employment sponsorship, and allows students to obtain, in-state tuition benefits and other things associated with the benefits of permanent residency. So before the expiry of that 2-year period, your immigration attorney is going to file the application for removal of conditions, or Form I-829. So this is essentially phase 2 of the EB-5 program. At this phase of the game, you are basically showing USCIS that, hey, I've complied with the requirements necessary for the program. So my funds were invested for the required 2-year period at an as an at-risk investment. They created 10 American jobs, and the project otherwise complied with EB-5 strictures. So once you submit that application, USCIS receives it and go ahead and extends your conditional green card for another 4 years, allowing them time to process the unconditional green card in a period of 2 to 3 years. So that explains most of the bars on the flow chart. As Jeff mentioned, the EB-5 visa program is also a path to U.S. citizenship from the time an applicant, their spouse, and their unmarried children under the age of 21, who are all eligible under the EB-5 program, receive their conditional green card, they can begin the path to naturalization. And for those in South Africa watching, South Africa is a country that allows one to hold 2 passports, both an American and a South African passport. So you need not renounce in order to have dual citizenship.
Yeah, Christine, if I could just chime in for 1 second on this. Just an important note, the conditional green card is conditional in that it only lasts for 2 years. But it gives you the same rights as the permanent green card. But with the conditional green card, when you're waiting for that approval for the permanent green card, it just gets extended until you get it. So once you get that conditional green card, there's not going to be a lapse. So you're in the US, and all that time, whether you're in the US on a conditional green card or a permanent green card, all counts towards citizenship if you choose.
Yeah, thank you, Jeff, for that clarification. Turning now to EB-5 visa applicants who are in the United States. So they may be international students on an F1 visa, might be on a specialty occupation H-1B visa, or even a visitor's visa. So I just want to flag this for people in that category, as well as the parents of prospective or current international students. There's a process at the 3rd phase of this EB-5 visa process for applicants in the United States called concurrent filing, that allows applicants to obtain essentially a synthetic green card within 3 to 6 months of applying. So it really speeds up the process for those who are in the United States. We, on a consultation basis, are more than happy to walk through the technicalities of this step. But for now, it's kind of like an overview, and we'll speak about it at a later stage on your EB-5 journey. So now we're going to pivot a little bit to the role of an immigration attorney and a regional center. So I'm going to hand the reins to Zippo to talk about the role of an immigration lawyer.
Right. Thanks very much, Christina. So the role of an immigration attorney in the EB-5 process, the most important part that one needs to know is that in the United States, you need to be accredited in order to be able to file. And that is the greatest significance of ensuring that you have an immigration lawyer who will be handling the entire, filing process. And this slide just illustrates how we handle the process from start, right up to finish, I can say. So once you have identified the regional center that you will be a part of, or rather that you will be investing in, there comes the biggest part of now evidencing that you do have the 800,000 US dollars, and that's about 15 million South African rands. Not only that, it is very important to illustrate the path of funds for that entire amount. So for each dollar in that 800,000 USD, you need to be able to evidence where does this money come from. So I know Christina mentioned that the source of funds process, or rather coming up with your source of funds narrative, can take about 4 to 8 weeks. But because of usually refer to this part of the application as such a heavy lifting process, so it can actually take beyond 8 weeks, depending on how complicated is it to trace the path of the funds that you will be using. So at this stage, this preliminary stage, we gave our clients, a questionnaire. This questionnaire is where we establish what is the easiest path to trace for us to trace for it. for this 15 million South African rands. If you can go to the next slide, Christina, you can see here that there's various routes that one can actually pursue. The most obvious one is, looking at your income, your professional income, salaries that you have earned over the years, the bonuses that you have received over the years. But how, this process, becomes tricky is that we do not just look at your, pay slips, that's what we call them here, your salary slips. We don't just look for those for the past 3 months or, for the past year. You need to be able to evidence that you've been earning income for the past 5 years. In other words, we'll have those salary slips, we'll have your tax returns, and everything that shows where exactly did you get, this money. But it's not always that simple. You find that because 800,000 US dollars, you might agree, especially if you are from South Africa, South African rand versus the USD, this is, quite a lot of money. It usually, you might find that, clients, they have, to sell some of their properties in order, or rather, or also liquidate some of their investment portfolios in order to make sure that they come up with this 15, million South African rands. Even so, you still need to go back. In the context of selling your property, we would need to go with the deed of sale. We would need to also evidence that if you say you have a mortgage loan, we need to evidence that each and every single month, this is, X amount has been, debited from your bank account towards your mortgage loan payment. So all of this needs to be traced right up until the part where you decide to sell your property. We need to have a valuation certificate that proves that this property, say, was worth 10 million South African rands, and it was sold at this price, on this time, and this was the value of the property, and be able to evidence that. Certain clients, you find that they liquidate their investments. So the most obvious thing is that you would, illustrate your investment, certificate or portfolio. But the USCIS really just wants to get to the bottom of things. So the more information you provide, the better, and the less chances of you delaying your application. In a sense that if the adjudicators feel that you haven't provided sufficient evidence, they could actually ask you for additional information that then slows down the entire process. So that is why, even if you've got an investment that you are liquidating, we need to go back and trace the 5 million rands that you are liquidating from this portfolio. Where did it originate from? Did you get it from your bonuses? Did you get it from the, from those proceeds of sale from the property? Did you perhaps invest this money? So all of those transactions, we need to produce soft documentation that proves that money left your bank account and went to a certain bank where you actually ended up purchasing stocks or investing in a certain portfolio. Now, you might ask yourself, what if I cannot find certain documentation from 5, 6 years ago? You find that with certain jurisdictions, I'll make an example with India. There is a clause in their banking legislation that says the only records that banks can keep is only from between 5 to 7 years from the date of the transaction. What happens then if you've inherited a business, say, from your parents, or you've inherited funds that have to be traced back beyond 10 years? So these are also some of the scenarios that one would face in the source of funds. And in these instances, clients are advised to provide documentation or evidence. In the example that I made about India, you would have to provide an extract of that legislation that proves that for this specific jurisdiction, banks here can only store or keep information from the past 5 to 7 years. And just one last important thing to also just take note of, which doesn't necessarily apply to South African clients, is the remittance limitation for each jurisdiction. In other words, are you able to, to even transfer that amount of money outside of the country where you reside in? So these are also important and significant questions that one needs to ask themselves. Now, from May 2022, the US, CIS, in re-looking at this program, there was an emphasis on gifts. You find that some of the clients, you've got, X amount that was gifted to you by your parents, or X amount that was gifted, by whoever. The most important thing here, even the person, the grantor of the gift, even the lender, if it is a loan, we need to trace where did the funds come from. So if I gift you with 14 million rands of that 15, I need to then go back and actually evidence where did I myself, acquire these funds. So that's essentially, it, Christina. The most important thing here, it's a document-heavy process. It needs a lot of patience, and different clients have different sorts of funds. And the most important thing is to identify that one that is less complicated, that will require, less, red tape, for lack of a better word, less, documentation. The one that is easier to trace, that is the one that one should go for. Okay, over to you.
Thank you so much, Deepo, for that explanation of source of funds. Pivoting now to, what is a regional center? So Golden Gate Global is a USCIS licensed regional center, which essentially means that we have the designation to facilitate the immigrant investor program into the United States through that government agency. I would say, in essence, our role is an intermediary between investor and investment. And in that role, we do a number of things, but it starts far before the investor actually makes the investment into that project. So talking about curating projects, scouting projects, and we haven't spoken much about what an EB-5 project typically looks like. But because of the job creation requirement associated with the EB-5 program, each investor makes an $800,000 investment that must create 10 American jobs. These projects typically take the form of real estate development or infrastructure development projects by and large. So in scouting those projects, regional centers will retain economists, attorneys, and real estate experts to conduct due diligence on the project. Some of that due diligence includes, where the project is geographically and whether it qualifies as something called a targeted employment area, which means priority processing and the lower $800,000 investment threshold. In addition, the regional center will undertake a preliminary job creation assessment, assess the strength of the developer who they're partnering with, and conduct a market or competitive analysis of the project, as well as financial projections. So when a regional center is ready to proceed with a project, let's say a real estate development project, they'll go ahead and file project documents with the USCIS and begin the capital raise. Once the project is in process, there are a number of oversight matters that the regional center will handle. Chief of which is tracking the spend on the project, updating investors about the project of the construction. Ensuring that the borrower repays on time is an absolutely essential part of a regional center's role, bearing in mind that the priorities of any EB-5 investor are A, the immigration benefits for themselves and their family, namely green cards into the United States, followed by B, repayment of their capital. So this is an absolutely essential task of the regional center to make sure that the EB-5 investment, which typically runs between 5 and 7 years, is repaid on time. Everything goes as planned. Following up on that, and if necessary, the regional center, on behalf of the investors, must take action against the borrower in a case of default. Other functions of the regional center: compliance with both U.S. securities laws and United States Citizenship and Immigration Services audits and procedures. And on the investor front, interacting with the investor throughout the entire EB-5 visa process, including assistance with filings, making interest payments to the investors, as well as capital repayments. Jeff, is there anything you'd like to add about the regional center side of things?
Yeah, thanks, Christina. I think I actually see a question in the Q&A from someone who asked about what about there's regional center, what about investing directly into doing EB-5 directly? You can. In fact, EB-5 was founded originally for people coming to the US, opening their own business, and then hiring in 10 employees, and then proving to the government that they stayed employed for 2 years. The regional center program came about 10 years after that, which allowed this pooling of money together. So it's not one person opening up a business. Right now, about 99% of EB-5 investments are through the regional center program. So yes, you can still do it direct where you go and open your own business, but most investors do it through this way, through passive investment. And without getting too deep into it, part of the reason is if you go to the US and you open your business, it's hard enough to open a business that's profitable. But you also have to comply with immigration. So oftentimes, you start a business up, it's not going smoothly. You have to employ 10 people while maybe you can't afford to because business isn't going well. It forces you to employ those 10 people no matter what. So your business loses money. Or worst case scenario is you can't afford to hire those people. So you fire people, you don't have 10 employees, and then you lose your immigration. So all that investment is for nothing. So the regional center, the real advantage of this program is the pooling of the money. What it allows us to do is to give investors around the world access to institutional quality projects for their investment. So really important. Most of our projects at Golden Gate have a budget of $300, $400, $500 million. There's institutional investors involved as well. Because we pool all these investors together, have the advantage of being able to make this investment into these types of projects. Job creation also, rather than just counting a worker on a site, which is tedious and difficult to track, the US government approves these economic models where you show them how much money you've put into a project and you enter all the inputs, and then an outside economist will certify, okay, if you spend $100 million here, you're going to create 2,000 jobs. We track all that and then allocate it to the investor. So the key piece takeaway is that, companies like ours, we've been doing this for 13 years and almost $1 billion worth of investment. We're experts in this. We're experts in proving the job creation and selecting the project. So for you, it's a passive investment. Put your money in, leave it there for 5 years. You won't get much of a return on it, but you will get immigration. And hopefully, assuming the project's successful, you will get your money back. So we do the heavy lifting.
Thanks for that, Jeff. So we're going to talk a little bit now about how do you judge, how do you measure a regional center? Who's this company is the intermediary between investor and investment. What are the metrics that you can look at in order to say, aside from flashy marketing, that this regional center is really as good as its projects are. So for me, there's a couple of things that stand out in terms of judging a regional center, and first of which, perhaps chief of which, is the number of years that it's been in business. Any regional center that's been in business less than 8 or 10 years means that they have not been through all the stages of the EB-5 process, and that goes for both from the immigration perspective and the investment perspective. So it doesn't mean that they're bad per se, it just means that they're untested. Some other factors to look at: the headquarters and location of the regional center, especially in relation to the project that you're choosing. Geographically, are they familiar with the area where the project is being constructed? Are they experts in that area, or are they relying on external expertise in order to facilitate the project? In terms of a company's track record, a regional center's track record, there's a number of things to look at. USCIS project approval rate. how much EB-5 funds have been raised and repaid, whether there's any defaults that the company has, meaning that they failed to repay their investors on time or in full or both, as well as the number of investors with approved conditional and unconditional green cards are some good bellwethers to keep in mind as you appraise regional centers. And turning to some more negative aspects of things that can plague a regional center. So assessing whether a regional center has had a project denial. So this would mean essentially that they perhaps did not vet the project properly enough at the front end of things. Perhaps they were too rushed to get the capital raise going and start earning money on it. But it means that at the phase of the process where USCIS is looking at your I-526E petition, it's going to be denied because it is essentially an ineligible EB-5 project. Another issue would be a project that fails to create jobs, tenant jobs per investor. So this is a really big deal because this can set back an investor in terms of their immigration benefits. The failure to create 10 American jobs will result in denial of your unconditional green card. So if that were to happen, it's close to a worst case scenario. Someone who's been in the United States for a number of years may be forced to find another non-immigrant visa or even leave the country. Another question to ask is whether the regional center has had any projects default. What happened? Did the regional center take action and sue the borrower to recover the funds? If so, how many investors were they able to recover funds on behalf of? If there's a high number of investors who were unable to recover funds, is the regional center exposed to litigation from those investors? Those are kind of some questions along the project default line. Second to last, termination of the project. So if the project ends before its natural timeline, this can impact both the immigration and investment pipeline for investors. And a number of things can happen to cause this, including a litigation stall, cost overruns, or simply that the developer runs out of money. Lastly, looking at the regulatory side of things. So regional centers are governed by both the United States Citizenship and Immigration Service on the immigration law side of things, as well as the Securities and Exchange Commission on the securities kind of side of things. EB-5 investments are in fact a security, so they are overseen by that agency. And something to look out for as you appraise regional centers is whether they've broken any immigration or securities laws, look for fines, settlements, reprimands, etc. So that was rather negative, and I would like to pivot from there to something positive to share with you, an example of a track record. This is Golden Gate Global's track record, something that we are very proud of as a company. So Jeff mentioned that we've been in business for over 13 years. And have raised over $750 million in EB-5 capital. We're very proud to have no defaults, meaning we've repaid all of our investors on time and in full to the tune of over $210 million. We've had 15 successful projects, all of which have enjoyed 100% USCIS project approval rate. And of our over 1,500 investors, more than 2/3 of them have received conditional green card application approvals.
If I think it's important after, of course, we're always going to talk about the negative like Christina did, to talk about the fact that there are several really great regional centers out there. There are probably 200 regional centers that are legally allowed to conduct business that are active right now in the US, but there's 5 or 10 of us who are really exceptional. So while there's risk in this, we always like to say, it doesn't have to be risky. So our job is to take as much risk out of the project as possible, right? So you can feel secure. And while we can never use the word guarantee, it's actually against the rules of EB-5. You can't guarantee an investment back. But we take steps to make sure you'll get your money back and get your immigration. And so we've been able to do that successfully now for the last 13 years.
Fabulous. Turning it over to Zipo again to speak a little bit more about Fragomen and Fragomen's practice.
Great. Thanks again, Christina. So just the most important, I guess, part from my side, especially in relation to the filing, your I-526, and, putting together your source of funds narrative. We haven't had a request for additional information, and what that simply means is that when it comes to this process, we've successfully been able to file and rather put together a very good narrative that compels the authorities to to proceed to the next stage. So that's one. And the most important thing that I can just highlight about Fragomen since inception is that we specialize on immigration. Immigration is the only thing we do. And so when it comes to certain elements of the application, we will always have stakeholders, like Golden Gate as well, who would partner with reputable stakeholders. And with the private clients, division, so our typical clients, it would be your investors, but that's not what it is limited to. We also are able to, assist you with various global mobility solutions. It could be, student visas. It could be an ancestry visa. And the firm as a whole, because it focuses, on immigration, we also largely service corporate clients. So we do a lot of corporate immigration as well, which would further just broadens our scope. So anything immigration, we do it. Got multilingual, for instance, for the South African office, what you typically find with such applications is that there is no on-the-ground support. You are just dealing with a lawyer that you perhaps meet virtually. But what Fragomen does is afford you with on-the-ground support, and that is myself. So you are able to also have physical offices that you can actually go to, in addition to having reputable lawyers who will be handling the actual application filing. So I look forward to hearing from a lot of you. My email address will be shared at the end of this presentation. Thanks very much again.
Yeah, if I could, Zifa, without bragging too much about you guys. One of the things with EB-5 is, you're not going to put your application in and say, okay, I really hope I get an approval. If an attorney, if Fragomen takes your case, it means you're going to get an approval. Now, they'll never use the word guarantee, but I will tell you, if a firm of the quality of Fragomen decides that your source of funds are okay and you're okay to proceed, you're going to be fine. Because the truth is, right, when they meet with you, Zifa, if you don't think you can prove their source of funds, you won't take them as a client. So they'll know before they invest.
Absolutely. And I promise we didn't pay Jeff to say that. It is an absolute fact.
No, absolutely not. I mean, one other piece of that, just to add, is, in our projects, we have a denial guarantee anyway. So our company, if you do get a denial for whatever reason, you would get your funds back. So that's why immigration attorneys make sure they do a good job in terms of ensuring that you're qualified to make the investment. Great.
Yeah, thank you to all of our panelists. We're not necessarily done, but I just wanted to share my contact information here on the screen. As I mentioned, I split my time between South Africa and San Francisco, but I'm always happy, regardless of where I am, to have a consultation. We offer free 45-minute consultations on EB-5. We can walk you through the process on a one-on-one basis and discuss your situation. Take next steps from there. But please, feel free to reach out. My email is here. I'll post it in the chat too. I'm on LinkedIn. The QR code will lead to my Calendly link, so that you're welcome to schedule a one-on-one consultation if you'd like. And lastly, I would like to let you know that we have a fantastic video library on the website 3gfund.com, which is Golden Gate Global's website. Jeff and my colleague Abhinav Lohia has recorded some fantastic videos, really excellent tutorials, from a neutral perspective that walk you through the EB-5 process and can answer a lot of preliminary questions as you start thinking about and exploring this option for yourself and your family.
Yep, and the last piece is, if someone had asked, this recording will be on YouTube. We'll send the link to everyone. If you'd like to review it after, everyone who's registered, we'll send the link out to you so you can review it if you'd like.